It's 8 o'clock, and so time to start. We're in Switzerland, and we are like very punctual, 8 o'clock. So very warm welcome to all of you. It's a great pleasure to welcome you here on this virtual platform through Zoom of the platform of Language Read, Center for Mindful Living. We are very pleased to welcome today Steve Hickman of the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion. We are very honored and very grateful that he has accepted to be part of this spontaneous online program that actually came to life over a month ago when the lockdown was already kind of on its way, and the center was closed, and we were wondering what could we do to, maintain the connection with the community, and to also be able to offer something in these times of distress, where I think people are turning and trying to look for answers or trying to look for tools to deal with the uncertainty that this situation is creating for all of us. So we had this idea to call on all of those teachers that were supposed to be here at Language Read for the in-person retreats, and ask them, would you like to contribute with this, 1 hour per week, so that we can offer something? And they immediately said yes, agreed, and we kind of put together this program with the tremendous help of Helen, and all together kind of this came together very smoothly, and here we are. So it has been so far very successful. We also had it was our first regular Sanner for the Center for Mindfulness from Basel. She was our guinea pig, the first one. Went very well, and since then it's been very successful. Steve, probably most of you already know him, but Steve Hickman, he is, as I was saying, he's the director, the managing director of the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion, and is responsible of the expansion of this center worldwide. He also leads the training of mindful self-compassion teachers around the world. He's also the founding director of the UC San Diego Center for Mindfulness, and has taught mindfulness-based stress reduction programs for over 20 years, and trains also MBSR and MBCT and MSc teachers, and conduct intensive MSc courses and workshops around the world. So it is our utmost pleasure to welcome you on this virtual platform. And so the teaching is going to last around 1 hour. Then there will be some time for question and answers at the end. And so I think without much further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to Steve. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you, Begonia. Thank you for inviting me to be here. And thank you, Regula, for making all of this happen as well, to get me involved. And thank you to all of you for taking the time to be with us in this virtual way. Before I go too far, I think it might be helpful for us just to pause and to fully arrive where we actually are in this moment. So I'd like to invite you to peel your attention off of the screen that's in front of you and move that attention inward, inside of you. And maybe, if you like, allowing your eyes to close, or just softening your gaze. And just taking a moment to feel what it feels like to be you in this exact moment. Maybe noticing the sensation of sitting. Maybe the sensation of the feet on the floor, or the body on the chair, or the touch of clothing, the temperature of the air meeting the skin. Allowing yourself to come out of thoughts about the future and the past, and to come into being just where you are, where we are. Maybe aware of this body breathing. Without having to breathe in any particular way, but just simply allowing the breath to breathe itself. Nothing else to do, no place else to go. Just allowing ourselves to ride on the in-breath and the out-breath. And perhaps checking in with the body to see what other sensations are here. Is there any struggle? Is there any tension? Any discomfort or pain? Any tingling, numbness, ease or relaxation? Letting it all be just as it is. Letting go of needing anything to be any different than it is in this moment, in this body. And you might, if you like, offer yourself some form of gentle, kind, supportive touch to the body to remind us of a kind of kindness we wish to bring to this practice, our time together. Maybe placing a hand on your heart or on the belly, or maybe even on the face, and just feeling the warm touch of your own hand, the kindness of your own heart expressed through touch. Reminding us that we're not only paying attention to our experience, but to ourselves, and it's kind, gentle attention. With all that may be unsettled in your mind or in your heart, letting this one moment be just for you. Letting go of needing anything to be any different. Meeting yourself in the midst of whatever is in your heart and mind with kindness, patience, warmth, compassion. Maybe noticing if the mind is active or distracted or preoccupied, and simply taking note, allowing the mind to do what it's going to do, and to purposely bring our attention back to this breath, to the feeling of the warm, supportive touch. Letting go of struggle. And as you're ready, allowing attention then to return to this virtual room, eyes to open. Maybe just taking a moment to arrive, to stretch. Maybe we'll be sitting together for a time, so maybe the body needs just a little bit of movement, a little stretching, a little waking up. Hmm. Most recently, I have a couple of weeks ago, actually, I wrote an article about the exhaustion that comes from being online like this, that somebody called Zoom exhaustion. And maybe some of you have experienced that if you've spent more than the usual amount of time in front of your computer connecting with other people. Um, it requires a certain quality of attention that can be exhausting. And so I invite you in our time together to do what you need to do to take care of yourself, to move your body as I suggested. I won't be the least bit offended. I'll actually be pleased if I see you stand up or walk around or stretch or turn off the video for a moment, whatever. I'll know that you are actually practicing self-compassion. It actually allows us to pay greater attention when we're actually a little bit kinder with ourselves. So I'm all in favor of that. So I was invited to talk about my favorite topic, self-compassion. As Begonia mentioned, I'm the executive director of the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion, and have had the opportunity to teach self-compassion in the Mindful Self-Compassion program for several years now, and to train teachers of it. And it seems to me that it's actually particularly valuable practice at a time like this. And it's often an overlooked practice in a certain kind of a way. So I thought I would just talk a little bit about how I see self-compassion actually supporting us in a time like this with the pandemic and quarantine and the limitations that we're all facing. And how we might actually find an opportunity in this, maybe to deepen our lives, our commitment to what's important, to actually finding greater meaning in our lives through the practice of self-compassion through a difficult time like this. We'll see where it goes, and actually have an exercise borrowed from the Mindful Self-Compassion course that we're going to do together around answering this fundamental question that I think will guide us today, which is the question of, what do I need? And that's a question that sometimes we don't know how to answer it. We often don't even ask ourselves that question, but it's really an important question. We'll keep touching on that throughout our time together. I actually would like to invite you, if you would, those of you who are inclined, each of us is struggling with different things in the midst of this pandemic of being locked down and quarantined and separated from our daily routines. I would actually invite you, if you'd like, to use the chat function. You can just click on the button at the bottom of your screen that says chat and type in whatever is worrying you, is troubling you, whatever about this crisis is really getting in the way for you. What are your struggles? What are your fears, your sadness, your anxieties, your worries? What is it about being in the midst of this worldwide situation that's troubling to you? I'd really like to hear what's on your mind about this. It might be concerns about your family and their well-being. It might be concerns about the future, about economic stability for you or the world. What's bothering you? What is getting in the way of you having some ease and peace in your life related to all of this? Just typing that into the chat. Don't need to do anything lengthy. Isolation, yes. This feeling of separation from others, right? We'll talk a little bit more about that. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Just being healthy, keeping our jobs, maintaining the status quo, just keeping things as they were. Yes, that closeness to other people. Again, too far from loved ones. Yeah, wondering how are things going to be different in the future with this social distancing or physical distancing? being away from the ones we love. Yeah, so a hopeful thought from Juliet about the future. The not knowing how long things will last, yes. Hugging. Yeah. Yes, so many people lost. Yes, I have often wondered how it is for those who are seeking a partner, and this is not an environment that's too easy to make that happen. Yeah. Yes, and just the physical demands of sitting in front of the computer and working in this way. Yeah, so thank you all for sharing these things. So many different challenges and worries, and yes, this overlap. I'm particularly intrigued by this idea of needing to be, when we bring our work home, which many of us are not used to doing, then suddenly we have a need to be productive when we're home. And what about being at home when we're home and with our families and doing what most people have done at home? So lots is in the room here. So what I've been thinking about a little bit is that when we are facing a situation like this, that first of all, I think it's important for us to acknowledge that we all here, even though we are facing all of these challenges that were mentioned, and I'm sure many more, we have a certain degree of privilege most of the time. That we are people who actually have the time to be here together for an hour online, that we have a computer, that we have access to the internet, that we can be with each other in this way, that this is a tremendous privilege that we have that we often forget about. And I think that's really the essence of what I'm learning in this pandemic situation, because we have been forced by necessity to focus on what it is we actually need. What is essential? You know, they talk about essential businesses that get to stay open, like pharmacies and grocery stores and, you know, doctors' offices and things. And when we can also think about what's essential for us as human beings. And it reminds me that these are the kinds of things, when we're thinking about food, clothing, shelter, health, well-being, these are the basic human needs that we all have, right? And almost everything else is extra, is some form of privilege in a way that some of us have not, you know, have many of us on this planet don't get to think about anything beyond those basic human needs. And so in a way, those of us who have privilege are now getting a little tiny glimpse into the lives of people who have much less privilege. And I don't mean to kind of imply anything better or worse or comparing or anything else, except to say that what we as people of privilege have been reminded is that when it gets right down to it, our needs are the same, all of us human beings. What we actually need is actually super important and quite simple. It's not always easy, and it's not always easily accessible, but in the end, food, clothing, shelter, health, and well-being is it. And maybe to kind of echo what a few people mentioned here, I'm thinking that if what comes out of this experience is that we have a better sense of what is actually needed and what is just wanted, that maybe we'll be in a better place as a whole human race. But I don't want to get too philosophical on you. What I want to suggest is that the fundamental question of self-compassion is actually to ask ourselves, what do I need? So that we can actually give ourselves what we need when we're struggling and having a hard time. So Kristen Neff, my dear colleague, one of the co-founders of the Mindful Self-Compassion program, says that self-compassion is composed of three elements, three components. Probably many of you have heard this before, but I just want to touch on it briefly for those who haven't. So the first component of self-compassion is mindfulness, awareness, is actually just noticing that we may be struggling or having a hard time, noticing what's here. We can't do anything unless we're actually aware of what's going on. So mindfulness is the first component of self-compassion. The second component of self-compassion is a bit of what I've been talking about here. It's around common humanity. It's recognizing that we are all human, which means that we all struggle, that we all have difficulty, that we all have a hard time, that we fail sometimes, that we share this bond of being human. And so when we feel sad, when we feel afraid, when we feel anxious, when we feel angry, we know that we're not alone. We're actually feeling the things that all humans feel. And that even in those times when we feel very isolated and separate from everybody, we're actually quite together. So many of you in your comments talked about feeling isolated in one way or another, not being able to hug your loved ones or be with your loved ones or to find a loved one. We've all acknowledged how hard it is to be physically separate from other human beings. So that's actually a beautiful reminder of our common humanity, how actually important it is for us to be connected to others. And then the third component of self-compassion is self-kindness, is actually giving ourselves what we need, being kind to ourselves, not to change how we feel, but because we feel bad. So these three elements come together to form self-compassion, which again, many of you may be familiar with, but most of us, what we find is that most of us are very good at being kind to others, being compassionate to others. And I think there have been some beautiful examples in the news and around us of people making tremendous acts of compassion. Just our healthcare providers alone, just looking at that one group, been tremendously compassionate for other people. So most of us are pretty good at being compassionate for others. And I think maybe in this time of a pandemic, we've found some ways to be kind to others that are kind of creative, whether it's just emailing a friend and just telling them how much you appreciate them. These are acts of compassion. But the point is that we're really good at being compassionate for other people. And often, many of us have a real hard time being compassionate to ourselves. I don't know if anyone on this call has recognized that in themselves, but I suspect that many of you do know what that means, that you can be quite kind to your dear friends and quite hard on yourself, because that's a common phenomenon. So how does self-compassion actually help us in this moment? Well, we can be, I would suspect that being in the position we're in, we are very focused on the things out there around us that make us fearful. You know, here is a virus, something we can't even see. We don't even know where it is. We could be giving it to someone else. We could be getting it from someone else. All of the things that go with that are all very painful things to deal with. And so we can be very focused on everything around us, the people around us, the people that we don't have near us, the people we want near us, the people we don't want near us, the bad things that are happening in the world in various ways. And what we often forget is that we are actually the ones who are suffering in those moments. When we're worrying, when we're thinking about, well, what is it going to be like after this? You know, what's going to happen to my loved ones? What's going to happen to my job? What's going to happen to my family's well-being? We are the ones who are actually suffering when we are worrying about those things. And this doesn't take away from the reality of those difficult things. But if it's possible for us to go inside and to meet our own struggles, our own fears, our own suffering with a little bit of kindness, among other things, it allows us to just make use of our own inner resources. We can actually be more kind and compassionate to other people, take better care of other people, do the things that need to be done when we're actually being kind to ourselves. So there's a popular saying that goes around that says, well, you can't be compassionate to other people unless you're compassionate to yourself. That sounds really good, but it's actually not technically true, to be honest. What is true is that you could, well, first of all, you know that if you're someone who's always kind to other people and hard on yourself, you know that that's possible because you do it that way, that you can frequently be compassionate to others and be terrible to yourself, be very critical. So that makes that statement a lie right there. So what we would say instead is that we can't actually sustain compassion for others if we're not compassionate to ourselves. In other words, if we're not putting the gas in the tank, so to speak, the petrol in the car, it's not going to run. It'll run for a while and then it's going to stop. We can be compassionate to other people and be hard on ourselves for a while, and then we burn out, and then we can't do it anymore. So if we actually want to be of service to the world and to each other, we have to be kind to ourselves, because that's what sustains us. That's actually what makes us strong and resilient, when we can actually be kind to ourselves. So what I'd like to really focus in on specifically is that if we are going to give ourselves what we need to practice self-compassion, then we have to know what it is we need. We have to be very clear on, what do I need? What do I truly need? And so what I'd like to do is to guide you through a little exercise that will help us identify what we need, what we really need. And the point of this, so a lot of you, I'm sure, are familiar with loving kindness practice, the loving kindness meditation, metta meditation, which is really a process of cultivating our own natural capacity, our wish for there to be happiness, joy, and goodwill in the world. We have I believe that humans have a natural tendency towards loving kindness. We all just want to be happy, right? We all just want well-being. So we know that there's actually a way that we can cultivate this boundless friendliness, as my dear friend Beth Mulligan calls it. We can cultivate that in our own hearts. And there are practices, loving kindness meditation, metta meditation, when we do that, when we actually find some phrases, use a set of phrases that we wish for a beloved being, for ourselves, for a friend, for a neutral person, even for a difficult person or all beings. You're probably mostly familiar with these kinds of loving kindness practices, where I like to think of them as like lifting weights at the gym. That when we're practicing loving kindness, we're strengthening the love muscle, so to speak, the heart, through practice. And so we can cultivate this inclination of the heart towards goodwill and kindness. And so we can have phrases like, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be healthy, may you live with ease, or other similar kinds of phrases. And we can offer them to a loved one, to ourselves, to a neutral person, to a difficult person, to all beings. You've all probably done this at some time or other. And it can be a beautiful heart-opening practice. And there is also the option of cultivating that loving kindness, that same goodwill, just towards ourselves. Not to the exclusion of everyone else, but to make sure that we're actually tending to this one here, the one that does matter to us, that we often overlook for another, that we often look beyond to others, that we can actually bring loving kindness to ourselves. And here's the beautiful thing about just choosing sometimes to practice loving kindness for ourselves. We can decide what phrases to offer. The phrases that get used are not chiseled in stone or brought down from a mountaintop somewhere. They are made by humans along the way. And we can find the phrases that work just well for us. Imagine what it would be like if you could actually practice loving kindness for yourself, not as a selfish practice, but because you too are deserving of your own love and affection and support. What if you could offer just the phrases you need to hear? You don't have to have what I would call generic phrases that are good for a loved one, a neutral person, a difficult person, all beings, yourself. You don't have to have phrases that work for everyone. You can customize these just for you. So we're going to walk through this little exercise together, if you'd like. This is the work primarily of Chris Germer, but also of Kristen Neff in the Mindful Self-Compassion program. And we're going to actually craft our own loving kindness phrases and then offer them to ourselves and to see what that might be like. Okay. So if you'd like, if you have a paper and pencil nearby, you can certainly write this down. You could write it on your computer. You could just do it in your own mind, whatever is right for you. We're just going to step through a little reflective writing practice to see if we can come up with some phrases, some loving kindness phrases that are just right for us individually, each of us. So maybe beginning as you're ready by turning attention inward, if you'd like, closing your eyes, taking a moment to let the sound of my voice just sort of fade and pull your attention off of the screen and back inside your own body. Giving yourself a moment to allow your heart to open just a little bit, to become receptive like a flower in the sunshine. To be willing to be kind and curious. And asking yourself a very simple but profound question. What do I need? What do I truly need? This could be as if this need has not been fulfilled in a given day for you, your day just does not feel quite complete. Letting it be a universal human need, like the need to be connected, to be kind, to be healthy, to be peaceful or free. What do you need? And whenever you're ready, if you're writing this down, maybe opening your eyes and jotting down what came to mind. What is something that you need? What are a few things that came up? Sometimes it can be helpful to remember that there's a bit of difference between what we need and what we want. Those of you who are parents have probably had a conversation with your children at some time about the difference between needs and wants. We sometimes will say that the wants are from the neck up and the needs are from the neck down. The needs come from the heart. What do you need? And so you may begin to have a clue of some words you could offer yourself in the meditation. And you could use just the words themselves. Maybe kindness came up, or love, or connection. Or you could actually frame it in the form of a short phrase or a wish for yourself. So maybe kindness was the word. So maybe your phrase is, may I be kind to myself. Sometimes it's okay to lower the dosage, so to speak. If something just seems a little bit too much, maybe you could say, may I begin to be kind to myself, if you're someone who's not typically kind to yourself. Or may I begin to consider the possibility that at some point I might be able to be kind to myself. Just starting yourself on that path. Maybe belonging is the word. And so the phrase is, may I know that I belong. May I know my own value. May I be free from fear. May I rest in love. Just taking your time. Whatever comes to mind, just allowing yourself to try it on, so to speak. What do I need? So we'll move on now to a second question, perhaps a little bit deeper question. You only have to go as deep with this question as you feel willing in this moment. Closing your eyes, perhaps again. If I could, what do I need to hear from others? What words do I need to hear? Because as a person, I really need to hear words like this. Maybe the words are, I love you. I'm here for you. I believe in you. You're a good person. Not trying too hard, just opening your heart, allowing yourself to be a little bit vulnerable and see what arises. What do you need to hear? Asking yourself, if I could, what words would I like to have whispered into my own ear every day for the rest of my life? Words that would make me say, oh, thank you. Thank you. That's just what I needed to hear. Allowing yourself to be open, receptive, vulnerable. And as you're ready, writing down whatever words came to mind, whatever you heard, when you ask yourself, what do I need to hear? So the words you can write them as wishes for yourself. Quite often, the words that we need to hear are actually the things that we need to be reminded of because we easily forget them. These are the things that we need to hear. We want to realize in our own lives. We lose track of them along the way. And that's why we need to hear them over and over again. For example, needing to hear, I love you, maybe just because we need to be reminded, we wish to know that we're truly lovable. That's why we need to hear it over and over. What do you want to know for sure? So again, perhaps what you need to hear is I love you. And you might want to just offer that to yourself. Or you could turn it into a wish. May I know that I am lovable just as I am. May I love myself just as I am. Or maybe what we need to hear is, may I know that I belong. May I know my own goodness. So maybe now just taking a moment to reflect on the words and phrases that you've come up with, the answers to the question, what do I need? And what do I need to hear? Perhaps there is something specific to this particular situation we find ourselves in. That what is it that you need to be reminded of in the midst of this COVID pandemic? What do you need to reassure you, to calm your heart, to meet you in the midst of whatever worries you and troubles you? What do you need to hear that gives you some steadiness, some ease in the midst of difficulty? Not to change anything about the reality of the situation, but just to meet yourself in the midst of it. So as you consider all of this, what you need to hear in general and in the midst of this worldwide situation, seeing if you might choose one or two or three words or phrases that you could offer yourself. And maybe commit them to memory for a time, and we'll actually practice together offering these phrases to ourselves as little gifts of loving kindness for ourselves. So as you're ready, as you have the words or phrases in mind, perhaps tuning back into the body, maybe adjusting your posture in the chair to give yourself a little stability and ease. Again, peeling attention off of the screen, feeling yourself in this moment, breathing. Again, if you like, placing a hand on the body in a supportive, soothing way. This is a practice of loving kindness. So it's good to remind ourselves of this kind intention for the way in which we intend to practice. We're not making demands, we are offering up wishes. And into this space of awareness, just taking the time to offer up these words and phrases to your own self. Making sure that the tone of the inner voice is one of warmth, kindness, and love. Offering yourself just what you need. Whispering into your own ear what you need to hear. Nothing else to do, no place else to go. Over and over, wishing your own loving kindness wishes for you. Always returning to the phrases if the mind wanders or drifts. Just coming back to whispering these kind intentions into your own ear over and over. As if you were whispering into the ear of a loved one Could you be your own loved one? Surrounding yourselves with kind words and wishes, just letting them float through your heart and mind, allowing yourself to receive them. But anytime you get a bit lost in the words or your mind wanders, maybe again returning a hand to the heart or some other soothing place, connecting to that touch and bringing yourself back to the this moment and back to the wishes, whispering them again into our own ears. Even when we wish for things that may not in this moment be absolutely true, the wish itself is true. This is about inclining the heart towards what we most need and need to hear. Can we simply wish these wishes for their own sake because we wish for them to be true? And as we're ready, maybe for now, releasing the phrases, allowing ourselves to feel just what we feel to be just as we are. allowing this to be an ongoing process. If this was the first time that you've practiced this, finding phrases, knowing that you can continue to refine, to reflect on what do I need? What do I need to hear? And come back to it over and over again. As you're ready, allowing eyes to open if they were closed. And just taking a little time. Perhaps if you were making some notes, your phrases may have shifted or changed just a little bit. Maybe you want to make note of that. Some people find that once they try on the wishes that they need to be adjusted a little bit. A word changed here or there. So this is, as I said, a practice that we can continue to refine, to find just the right words. And of course, our needs change. So maybe in the midst of this pandemic, we have certain needs, and at another time, there'll be different needs. Or maybe today we have some needs and tomorrow they're different. There is always that opportunity to just take the time to offer ourselves what we might need, not because anybody else doesn't need our love and kindness and loving kindness, but we also need to be included. So let's not forget ourselves. I wanted to share one poem with you, and then I'm curious to hear a little bit about your experience of this practice that we can handle in a particular way that Begonia will walk you through. But, you know, I was really touched by the comment here that's says, I felt more happy during the shutdown because everything did slow down. Now I feel guilty and anxious that I can't keep up. We, with all of this time to be present, to be still, to be locked down, quarantined, whatever you want to call it, to shelter in place, I think one of the greatest gifts is that we actually were able to slow down and to see maybe where all of our frenzy and busyness was taking us. And maybe to wake up to where that wasn't serving us very well. And this is what I mean by the possibility of making change over time, by having a little clarity, by having a little stillness in our lives that we try to cultivate with meditation and self-compassion and mindfulness practice. We find these little windows, and maybe this sheltering in place was one big long meditation retreat, a chance for us to reset, to kind of come into the present moment and to sort out what's important and what isn't. And what would it be like if we, for a little while, stopped longing for something else and we actually got in tune with what we really need, what was really important to us? That when we stop looking for wanting it to be different, what might we discover? And that just made me think of a poem by David White that some of you may be familiar with. It's called The Well of Grief. I think it speaks to this wishing for something else. Those who will not slip beneath the still surface on the well of grief, turning down through its black water to the place we cannot breathe, will never know the source from which we drink, the secret water cold and clear, nor find in the darkness glimmering the small round coins thrown by those who wished for something else. What if we let go of wishing for something else and just connected with what's actually here? There's a wonderful opportunity in this, being present in the midst of all of this, to reevaluate, to reconnect with what's important. by willing to meet ourselves with kindness when we're struggling and suffering and wanting it to be different. That when we can actually meet ourselves with kindness, maybe there's a chance to go a little deeper, to make a little bit of a difference in the course of our lives, our choices, the way we treat each other, the way we treat the planet. We have all sorts of opportunities here to change our course, to listen to what we really need, and to have a little less noise in the system, so to speak. So anyway, I don't want to get too philosophical on you, but I would love to hear your experience of this, finding your own phrases and offering them up to yourself. I think Begonia wanted to give you a little guidance on how to raise your hand and participate in the conversation.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for this advice. And it's pretty simple about going about asking questions. So if you want to actually be unmuted and ask the question directly to Steve, just you can make the use of the function where it says participants or Teilnehmer in German at the bottom of the screen. If you click there, there will be a window that opens, and then there is a blue hand that you can click on, and I will see that. That means that you're raising your hand. I can see that, and then I can unmute you. So that is is done in an orderly manner. Yeah, so that's I think there might be people who also feel comfortable with asking questions through chat. It might be a possibility as well. I don't know what you think, Steve.
Yeah, happy to respond either way.
And
just to say that they can be questions, but I would also encourage people to just share your observations of the practice. Doesn't have to have a question attached to it. I would love to know just how it was for you.
And just one point, you've probably seen on the screen, we are being broadcast live on Facebook, in case you're not aware. So if somebody has an issue with that and doesn't want to show on the screen, just make sure you turn off the camera.
And no need to be shy. Helen.
Do you hear me, Steve? It was just so, I mean, here I'm kind of working, you know, letting everybody in and out, but I tried to also take part in your guidance, and it's just this sensation of soothing comfort by allowing myself, wishing all this for myself. And what I thought was so beautiful and also really helped me is that image of, like you saying, like whispering into my own ear. So I had this image of having that whispered in my ear, and it just felt so soothing and relaxing and soft, and it really touched me, and feeling really this just this being in that state of love, unbound to someone or to myself, but just being with that. And I found it a very easy way to connect to that, and I will keep that with me, whispering in my ear all these nice things that I say to myself. Yeah.
And isn't it wonderful that it doesn't require anybody else? It doesn't
No.
require any equipment. You've always got it available to you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Georg, I'm going to unmute you. I see that you want to raise your hand, so I will just unmute you and you can talk. I can manage. What can I do? Unmute you.
Hello.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm online now.
You are online.
Hello, Steve. This is Jörg.
Oh, right.
Thank you, Steve. I liked very much your eye language and your mimics corresponding to what you said. It was very good and helpful. I felt you were much in the mid of what you thought, what you said. So what I would like to know, you're very experienced in clinical psychology. I'm a psychologist as well. I work on RET, rational emotive therapy, with Orbit Ellis. I don't know if you work with him or with his method as well.
I'm a little bit familiar with his method.
With the rational emotive therapy, the way we think is what we are or how we live. So what I wanted to ask you, I work in yoga and mindfulness quite a bit, but I would be interested how far you see the must tyranny. Orbit Ellis says, there's no must, and just let it go and be in the mid of yourself. Feel inside of you. Try to get relaxed by getting rid of must tyrannies and all that. Do you see a close relationship of this rational emotive philosophy and mindfulness? Do you think it's, I hope it's not too abstract for all the listeners, but I hope it's helpful, my question.
No, I think it is helpful, and I think what you're referring to, this in English, sometimes we hear this phrase, the tyranny of the shoulds, you know, which is much like the must. In other words, it's that we become a victim of our own thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, the things that we think lead us to feel certain ways, right? And I think that's what you're speaking of. And I think that the practice of mindfulness, combined with the practice of self-compassion, allows us to just see those thoughts, those shoulds, those musts, as just fleeting phenomena that come up in our mind, right? They're random neuron firings. They're, I sometimes say brain secretions, you know, a thought that says, I must be perfect, or I should be doing this or that. It's just a thought. It's just a thing that happens in the brain. It just comes and it goes. And it's not, but it has its sort of power over us if we don't recognize that it's just a passing thought like any other. And that, so I think what mindfulness and compassion help us to do is to feel the impact of those thoughts and to just meet ourselves in the midst of them, because we are not our actual thoughts, right? We are something other than our thoughts. And again, I don't want to get too abstract and philosophical either, but maybe as we ask ourselves this question about what do I need, the first thoughts come up, maybe they're very much more like wants, right? Oh, I need to physically be with people. Well, in this moment, if you're not physically able to do that, there is a certain need to feel connected, but that need, that telling yourself, I must be with other people, is actually causing us suffering. And when we can separate out and how could I meet this need of connection under the circumstances? I think there are just ways, I guess, of separating out the thoughts that lead us to suffer, and bringing us home to what we actually need. And again, you and I could probably talk for 2 hours about this, so we won't do that today.
You hear me?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you so much for offering your thoughts.
Oh, thank
So
you.
I feel quite connected. I think you got, I didn't express with full redundancy, but I thought that you got my idea. Thank you so much.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay. So you can take me out again.
Anybody else? Kathleen is asking where you can receive more of my teachings, which are really teachings of Kristen. Kristen, maybe Begonia, maybe now would be a good segue for you to mention, in case you want to meet me in person with Regula.
Sure, yeah, of course. So you probably all know that Regula and Steve were supposed to be here. It was actually, no, it was at the end of May. You should have been here. Of course, it has been cancelled, but it's been rescheduled. We are so happy that we are able to announce a new date. That would be early 2021. From 26th of February to the 3rd of March for 5 days. Great opportunity to receive more teachings from Steve. A pleasure in person and in person context, which is also so important. That energy field that creates and the sharing of those teachings live.
You know, these days, so many things are happening online, which is wonderful. If you just imagine what would this situation be like 10 years ago when we didn't have this amazing technology, we would not be able to sit and look at each other, even if we are far apart. So there is a beautiful thing that happens, that we have this technology that we're able to connect. And as I mentioned, I wrote an article about this exhaustion that comes from being online together. So this is a beautiful thing, and it's not the same thing as being together, both just being physically together, but also in retreat. I have colleagues who are teaching online silent meditation retreats for 5 days, which is really nice when that's the only option that's available. And for some people, travel, even in the best of times, is difficult, and they get something really valuable from an online retreat. But there is something significantly different, and I won't even say better, but certainly different, about being able to gather in a place far from home, away from your daily routine, to let go of some of those constraints, to focus on what you really need in a beautiful place like this center that you have, and to be, as I said, away in silence, together with teachers who love this practice and like to share it. There's something qualitatively beautiful about that, that if you haven't been on a silent meditation retreat, the retreat that we planned might be just the thing.
Good. I think we had someone who wanted to ask a question. Michelle, I'm going to unmute you now.
Okay, hello. Hi, Steve. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. It's not a question, it was also more just my response to this session with you. It's very much me, I guess, like many of us, this must and should. And those are words that I try to forbid in my daily language, but they still come up. And it was very wonderful because this practice, the word may I in my sentences became more and more. And I think you probably brought that into, I'm sure it was that you had brought that in here. And it really connected immediately. And I said, so all my sentences were, may I, and I was first starting with, I will. And then I realized this may is very beautiful. It's quite compassionate because it allows the openness. Yeah. It doesn't give the determination. It just more lets it be open. And I think that's what compassion is really more about. It's just that openness. So I really want to thank you for that softness. Yeah. That I just received from this 1 hour. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. And, you know, it bears reminding that the softness came from within you, right? I didn't actually with you. But it's a good reminder. Yes. And sometimes, and I don't know how it is with other languages, but I know that in English, sometimes when we say may I, sometimes it works because what it really means is, you know, may it be so. Yeah. You know, it's just an opening. It's very open-ended and kind. Sometimes people hear may I and it sounds like begging to them, which is not what the intention is. So I think you definitely got it. I just wanted to mention that.
Thanks.
Yes. Somebody asked for the link to the article about Zoom exhaustion. I just put it in the chat if you'd like, and I can also email it to Begonia if you'd like. But yeah, anything else? Well, it's been so wonderful to gather with all of you and with my dear friend Regula and my new friends Begonia and Helen and all of you. Most of you are probably already familiar in some way or another to the Mindful Self-Compassion program. I'm sure it's worth, if you haven't had a chance to look into it, to please check it out. Did I see another hand go up? Oh, Regula.
Yeah, Regula.
So, hello all together. You heard that Steve and I wanted to do this retreat and would have liked to be there in the Ried. We'll be there next year. And thank you, Steve, for this practice for all of us. And I would like also to welcome, not to welcome, but to say that here are some MSc teachers teaching MSc, you know, in Switzerland. So as Ursula and Marisa, and is somebody else here who is teaching MSc in Switzerland? These people, you know, Ursula is in close to Zurich or St. Gallen, and Marisa is in Basel, and there are also other teachers, you know, all over Switzerland or Germany where you can see and go and do this practice with them, who were all taught, or some of them were taught from Steve also. Yeah. And there is a website, das eine deutschsprachige Webseite, und die heißt msc-selbstmitgefühl.org. MSc und -selbstmitgefühl.org, wo ihr alle, there are some other, you know, all the German-speaking MSc teachers are there on this website, and you can find courses in Switzerland, Austria, and also in Germany. Okay.
Thank you, Regula.
So we think we still have a few more minutes if somebody wants to share thoughts or ask questions.
I'm wondering if anyone struggled at all with this practice or had a difficult time. It's not always easy, even though it sounds quite wonderful and people do have a pleasant experience sometimes. Sometimes it's not as easy. Be happy to hear from you if you had a hard time or you have a question that's bothering you, or very quiet group today.
There's one hand. So, Easy.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
I'm in the dark now, but I hope you still hear me.
Yes, just fine.
I just had sometimes thoughts of struggle, knowing, or really something I need, or is it just something I think I need to really feel or sense the difference? And how can I trust myself to be sure that's really something I need and not that just my brain thinks I need?
Yes, exactly. Yes, you are like all human beings. Your brain is very tricky, right? Yeah, I tend to think that one way of sorting that out is taking time and letting it settle, and actually to see if it keeps coming up over time. I think our brain can trick us into almost anything. So I think it's something about, does it sustain? Does when it comes up now? Well, here's another way of thinking about it. You know, maybe when what your brain offers up as something that you think you might need, but you might just want, you might maybe see what's underneath that. Like asking yourself, okay, so this thing that I want, like maybe sometimes what happens is a person thinks, well, what I want is this particular person as a partner. Well, or that I need this person as a partner. So, okay, so we may not actually need that person, but what is it about this person that we need? What is it that this person brings into our lives? So sometimes the want has the need underneath it, you know? So that it's worth exploring a little bit. You know what I mean? To just see, well, what is it? If I got that, this thing that I think I might just want, what need would it fulfill? Is there something underneath it that's more close to the heart, if you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, thank you very much. I will stay curious and try to find out what's beneath. Thank you so much, Steve.
Yes, you're welcome. And sometimes it's tricky because the need is more like a felt sense than it has words sometimes. So it's good to just be patient with it, I think, is the key. Let it cook down, so to speak, and then often what we find underneath is that need. So yes, and staying curious, you're right, that's the key. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, yeah, if there is no more comments or questions, then I think we could come to a close. If people are, I don't know, is there anyone wanting to say something? I saw some movement, some shy movement. Okay. Good. So I just wanted to,